This program was made possible in part by a grant from Florida Public Broadcasting Service, Incorporated.
You can see I'm a talky woman. I've been called the talkingest woman in Florida.
It's all that talking that's made 94-year-old Marjorie Stoneman Douglas one of Florida's most beloved citizens. For years, she has lectured, advised, and helped lead the battle for preservation and restoration of Florida's natural resources. Hello, and welcome to Southern Circuit. I'm Ripley Stone. This week's journey begins in Coconut Grove, where we'll meet the woman known to many as Florida's Empress of the Everglades. She's writer, activist, and inspiration, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Life has just begun for Gainesville's Renaissance man, 58-year-old Lenny Kessel. The accomplished teacher, artist, jazz singer says he's just getting started on his creative endeavors. Tallahassee's Liz Carter's endeavors include writing and canoeing. Her love for Florida's rivers are detailed in her book, Downriver Canoeing. You might remember him as the macho-muscled animal trainer from The Ed Sullivan Show. Today, Frenchman Robert Bodie lives in Central Florida, where he runs a captive breeding center for rare and endangered species. We'll visit him in Bevel's Corner when we journey to Central Florida on this week's Southern Circuit. Stay with us.
Well, I came to Florida in 1915. And when I did, there weren't 5,000 people in the city of Miami. It was just a little funny town in a marvelous setting of the bay.
At 94 years of age, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas has lived to see Florida grow from swampland to what it is today. She likens the experience to going over Niagara Falls in a barrel. Florida's Empress of the Everglades, as she prefers to be called, is best known for her historic book, The Everglades, River of Grass. She took up the battle to preserve the state's precious wetlands more than 60 years ago from her father, himself a dedicated preservationist. Today, she is still very protective of her beloved Florida.
Our sole source of water is rainfall. And when it does rain, and much of it comes from the wet Everglades, we now know. The evaporation of the wet Everglades goes up as clouds, comes down as rain. So if we didn't have if the Everglades were not wet, we wouldn't have any rainfall, we'd be a desert. I'm one of two people alive now who are on the original committee to establish the Everglades National Park. So it took 20 years to establish the park. I came down to get a divorce, and my father was the editor and part owner of the Miami Herald. So I came down and you had to be here for 2 years in those days, couldn't get a quickie. So I got a job on the Herald, and when I got the divorce, I loved it down here anyway, so I stayed. No reason to go anywhere else. I wanted to be a freelance. My father said, I don't understand how you can stand not knowing where your money's coming from. And I said, well, Father, the answer is it's a challenge. You don't understand. Of course, he had dependents. Not really me, but more or less, and all that. But that's a different matter. I didn't have any dependents, didn't have anything but a cat. I could afford a cat. And so it worked out very nicely. I was a writer from the time I was on the paper, of course, but it's wonderful to find something that has really, this, as you say, the significance of the Everglades that's never been written about before. So I was so fortunate, you see, to sort of discover them. I discovered them as a river. That was my contribution. Before then, they thought it was just swamps. Without water, we could not live. And water I am a devoted, dedicated environmentalist. I think we've all got, especially women, have to recognize that the environment is an extension of their interest in housekeeping. We've got to housekeep the rest of the country. men too, of course, but we've all got to be more and more aware of the environment.
You saw the problem with the Everglades early when it was very unpopular to talk about it. And now the country, not the administration, but the country has come to see that you were right.
Marjorie continues campaigning for public awareness by making frequent speeches around the state. When she's not on the road, her time is spent at her Coconut Grove home, completing her 8th novel, a biography of another conservationist, W.H. Hudson, author of Green Mansions.
He wrote something like 23 books, all very distinguished books, all quite different. One wonderful book called Far Away and Long Ago, about his 10 years as a boy in the Pampas. It's one of the great, it's not a complete autobiography, but for the 10 years, it's a truly great autobiography. I think a lovely book. I never tire of reading it.
My supervisor had urged me to stay in Chicago and made flattering promises, but I tried to explain.
You can't go around mourning the fact that you're old and you're losing your eyesight, you know. I can't do that. Well, I haven't lost it at all. It seems to have reached a plateau. But so I adjust. I don't pay much attention to it. I have secretaries. I have 3 different secretaries. I work Monday and Thursday with one, and Tuesday and Friday with another, and Wednesday and Sunday with another, and then have one day off.
Do you miss being able to really see it?
Well, I'll tell you, you can't spend your life missing things, you know. You've got to go on and manage, so I don't. I know what it looks like. And I can feel it. I can see the openness. I can see the sky here. I see where the horizon is, and I can feel the wind and all that. Yes, you must think to a point you're not going to let it get you down, honey, because there's no point in that. You still have a long way to go, you know. I love listening to the birds. Because when you stop to listen to them, they're silent.
What was the best time for you living in Florida?
I think it's right now.
Why is that?
Because I'm alive. Well, yeah, and you cannot live in the past. You can't actually live in the future very much, you know. You have to live now. That's the best time, always. The best time is when you were alive now. That's the way with everybody. If I said that when I was a little girl, oh, stupid. When I was a little girl, youth is a dreadful time, I think. I like getting older. Of course, if you stop getting older, you're dead, you know. So you can't do that.
The singing that I do is really a tradition of singing, just like those kind of singers that occurred in the 30s. I come out of all those singers like I'm the last of a dying breed.
You'll run down in past 40. You're just like a cake of ice. You need some young blood to put some spice in your life.
To describe Lenny Kessel as a colorful character would be an understatement. To describe him as a talented artist, musician, and gifted teacher seems inadequate. Perhaps rare is the best description for a man who, approaching 60, feels his life is just beginning.
I don't know how I'd describe myself. I'll tell you how I'd describe myself. Lucky. Lucky that even the things that weren't good that happened to me seemed to be beautiful after I look back on them. That's really what I think is the trick of, getting through what we call life, is looking at it all and saying, gee whiz, was I lucky.
He started out intending to pursue a career in music, but while in school at Wesleyan, he took an art class, and the matter was settled. He was to be an artist, and like most artists, he had to find some method of supporting himself.
I've done all kinds of things, you know. Worked in a meat packing place, you know, in an ice box. It's cold in there, you know. And, you know, worked for a water servicer, you know, put that stuff in there to make the water soft because the water was hard where I was. Fuller brush person. Worked in a wallpaper paste factory, you know. One time I started, but that job, that was one that I guess the guy just knew that I wouldn't make it, and I was going to sell airplane tickets. I guess he thought I'd send everybody to Nepal, which would be a great idea, you know, to send everybody to Nepal, except there'd probably be too many people in Nepal.
Fortunately, Lenny settled on a teaching career to support himself while he pursues his passions of art and music.
Now, keep remembering that. If you're working with acrylic, don't get threatened. Just say, this is an opaque medium. And it's an opaque medium that I can control because I got to get the value of the color, like on your value chart, right on the button, see? Now, with oil, you can sort of push it around. And you can also do that by watering down the acrylic, but it's not by nature a substance that you can do that with. It seems to me like when you're a painter, you're kind of affording the habit of being a painter in some way or another. When you have a lifestyle with a painting kind of background, making those paintings, it's just like a guy going to his local tavern for a beer after work, you know. But a painter always has that beer right in front of him, you know, cadmium red light, little tube of watercolor, little acrylic, you know, like that. When I make art, I always try to make it have a kind of happiness, you know, with the color. And also I try to make it happy with the expressions. Now somebody say, but she looks kind of empty-headed. But that's just a joie de vivre, you know, joy of life, look to me. So I always try to get good composition, good structure, good color, and then the cast of characters almost are just something that just happen to be there. I've always fascinated, somebody will say, oh, I saw that thing, I saw that drawing of yours. Looks just like Picasso. Well, and I think, well, they should know a little more about it because I hope it doesn't look just like Picasso, because that's the whole idea. You know, you work your way out of the people that you are enamored by early on. If you do something and then you have an audience when you're gone and somebody says, look at that son of a gun. That to me, you know, is really a credible way to spend your energies.
But she said, you get lost, Lenny Kessel. I don't need your rolling no more. Now get this. She said, you'll run down in past 40. You're just like a cake of ice. You need some young blood to put some spice in your life. You've been a good old man now. A good old man down through the years. But now it takes too much time, too long for you to get it here.
Look at that beautiful yellow butterfly. Isn't that pretty?
Many tranquil hours spent paddling the rivers of North Florida have been more than quiet breaks from the daily pressures for Tallahassee's Liz Carter. As a psychologist, she finds them therapeutic, and as an author, she finds her canoeing a popular subject to write about as well.
There's a catfish, 2 catfish. See him? I'm a very compulsive person, and I have a lot of activity going on all the time when I'm at home and when I'm at work. And when you go canoeing, particularly downriver canoeing, you put in at point A and you're going to take out at point B, and you have no control over what happens in between. And once I make that commitment, once I get on the river, I lose all these other things that are pulling at me and making demands on me, and I just take whatever comes. think canoeing appeals to mental health professionals. I've seen a lot of them that canoe, and I think probably that's because of the intensity of the work that you do all week. And on the weekends, you need something really different, something that is not so people-oriented. And yes, I think that canoeing is a real relief from psychology. About 6 years ago, people were calling me a lot and saying, how do you get here and how do you get there? And how long is it going to take me to go from point A to point B? And what is it too hard for me? And what can I expect in between? And I was on the telephone just nightly giving people directions. And I thought, why not just type up a lot of this information that I'm giving over the telephone, Xerox it, and hand it out to people when they call me and ask for it.
A friend convinced her to publish a booklet rather than giving her knowledge away, and inadvertently launched her other career.
I couldn't believe there were so many people that wanted to buy books about canoeing. Okay.
All right. Load them up. Let's go, kids.
Okay, kids. I think one of the really neat things that's come out of writing about canoeing is I've met a lot of people who also write about canoeing or who have read books that I've written, and it's established a sort of a network of paddlers. There are people that come down usually during the winter and park their vans in our backyard and go paddling around here, and then in return in the summers we can go park our van in their yard and paddle in their area. So it's expanded the reach of our opportunity to go paddling. We've done a lot of that the last 2 or 3 years. I'm just about ready. Okay. Thank you. I'm very, very impressed with canoeing as a lifelong leisure activity because of the variety of people that canoe with me and that I see canoeing. People who are physically handicapped can canoe when they can't do other kinds of things. They can't hike into beautiful and remote areas, but they can canoe there. Older people, the same token. Things that they no longer are able to do that require a lot of physical stamina, they can still do in a canoe, not to mention just the sheer pleasure of it. Canoeing is not a sport that requires a lot of physical strength. It requires a lot of finesse and a lot of technique. And it's especially appropriate to women because people who have a low center of gravity generally make better paddlers because you're low in the boat and you don't have all this heavy body mass looming up over the top of the canoe and getting you off balance. And because it doesn't require a lot of strength. I think it's a great family activity because it's a way that all of us can get out together and do the kinds of things we like to do. Kids can swim and play in the water and camp, and we can paddle and swim if we want to.
I enjoyed canoeing before I met her, but my canoeing was going up and down the Wakulla as a relief from business. And I hadn't done much paddling. In fact, I hadn't done any since I was an adult until I met Liz, other than that. And she went out, and I just went along, to be with her. That was the only way I could do it.
It just goes on a long way. The best part of canoeing for me is just the river, the feeling, the birds and the water and the weather and the alligators and the snakes and whatever's going on. Sometimes I don't think about anything at all. I just float.
You got to be involved, emotionally involved, in order to sustain year after year after year of this type of work, you know.
There you are.
So I think then really I'm a freak, you know, a good freak for the animals.
Robert Bodie has spent a lifetime with animals. He was born and raised in France, where his family trained them for a living. Robert went on to study zoology and became a performer. In 1950, he came to this country to appear on The Ed Sullivan Show with his Monkeys and Greyhounds act.
Bodie, is that the greatest? Bodie, where are you? Where's Bodie? He comes from Paris. That is the greatest animal act we've ever had. We had all of the great animal acts on, but I think that is, well, what would you think? Would you think it was?
Caging himself with a dozen Bengal tigers, Robert stayed on to tour the United States. During a 1952 appearance at the Tampa Fair, he fell in love with Central Florida, bought an oak hammock 4 miles outside Center Hill, and set up an animal breeding center.
I really never enjoyed to be a showman, you know. There's too much artificial elements in show business. The money was very good, but I was not really happy. I found satisfaction in breeding rare species that I did not find on the road, you know, and so basically this is why I decided at the top of my career, when I was making very good money, to stop the show business part of my life and to go into managing this farm seriously. Over a period of years, a very large number of species, mammal species, were bred, captive bred here. And some of those species we no longer breed. But we still breed 17 species of rare cats. We breed 5 species of deers. We breed 5 species of lemurs and so forth. Most of those species have something in common. They're extremely rare in the wild. Some are on the verge of extinction. Some, as a matter of fact, are already extinct in the wild, you know. And so this is basically what we're trying to do, is to captive breed some animal. And of course, at this point, we are not reintroducing the animal in the wild, which is really the ultimate goal, you know, the final goal. But we do the next best thing. We sell them to private breeder and to zoo, who will keep the species alive in captivity. My goodness, you don't look too peppy, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Come on, my baby. Oh, my good baby. First of all, if you are in the animal business, one realizes very quickly then you're on call around the clock. There's no such thing as holidays and vacation. And so this is basically why I live right here on the premises, is because emergency happens from time to time. You got to be on call. And so there's a lot of work. There is also a lot of logistic problem and feeding problem and so forth. For instance, to feed the entire compound, the meat-eating animal, take 3,000 pounds of meat a day. And of course, you know, this forces us to go in building our own slaughterhouse and so forth, you know, in order to provide those animals with the best diet that could be obtained. It's a costly place, but it is also a very rewarding place because things happen here that sometimes never happened before. Here, Tor. Here. And Tor is a very important snow leopard because, at least in my life, it took me 12 years of working with the snow leopard to produce this first surviving cubs there. This animal is now 13 years old. Until we bred the snow leopard at sea level and in subtropical climate, this was deemed to be impossible by experts. But this is a living proof that you can take an animal that can sustain 90 below 0 Fahrenheit in his natural environment, and with work and expertise, not only you will maintain that species for a long, long time, but you will actually breed them. There's plenty of room right now for more people like me, and plenty of species that will be gone in a very short period of time, within a matter of few years, unless some more people are moving in and are, you know, ready to dedicate their life to that kind of work. So I think then, you know, what we're doing here is certainly important from that standpoint. Satisfied. I feel that I should have get started early, so I could have accomplished a little more. But I never cry over spilled milk, so I do the best I can with what I have, and I'm looking forward to breed some other species, new species.
That's this week's Southern Circuit. Thank you for being with us. Be sure and join us again next week when we'll travel to St. Augustine to visit with humorist Gamble Rogers. And in Daytona Beach, we'll meet the founder of NASCAR, Bill France. We'll also make stops in Sopchoppy and Tallahassee. We hope to see you then. Have a good week.
This program was made possible in part by a grant from Florida Public Broadcasting Service, Incorporated.